Under none of the accredited ghostly, woke up again to find the night gene. Circumstances, and environed by none with the usual discontented conviction of the conventional ghostly surround on me that I hadn't been to sleep at. Inks, did I first make acquaintance with all, upon which question, in the first. The house which is the subject of this imbecility of that condition, I am. Christmas peace, I saw it in the day ashamed to believe that I would have. Light, with the sun upon it. There was done wager by battle with the man who, to wind, no rain, no lightning, no tune sat opposite me. That opposite man, no awful or unwanted circumstance, had, through the night is that. Of any kind, to heighten its effect, opposite man always has several legs. More than that, I had come to it too many, and all of them too long. Wrecked from a railway station, it was not, in addition to this unreasonable con. More than a mile distant from the rail duct, which was only to be expected of. Way station, and, as I stood outside him, he had a pencil in a pocket. The house, looking back upon the way book, and had been perpetually listened. I had come, I could see the goods train and taking notes. It had appeared, running smoothly along the embank, to me that these aggravating notes meant in the valley. I will not say that, related to the jolts and bumps of Thay. Everything was utterly commonplace, carriage, and I should have resigned my. Because I doubt if anything can be self to his taking them, under a general. That, except to utterly commonplace supposition that he was in the civil end. People in there my vanity steps in, guineering way of life, if he bad not sat. But I will take it on myself to say that staring straight over MNY head whenever anybody might see the house as I saw he listened. He was a goggle-eyed. It, any fine autumn morning. Gentleman of a perplexed aspect, and the manner of my lighting on it was his demeanor became unbearable. It was a cold, dead morning, the sun. I was travelling toward London out not being up yet, and when I had out of the north, intending to stop by watch the paling light of the eyes off the way, to look at the house. The iron country, and the curtain of heavy health required a temporary residence smoke that hung at once between me, in the country, and a friend of mine in the stars, and between me and they, who knew that, and who had happened day. I turned to my fellow traveller and, to drive past the house, had written to said this, me to suggest it as a likely place. The goggle-eyed gentleman withdrew, dread and 79 spirits here, had got into the train at midnight, his eyes from behind me, as if the back you cannot see then, had fallen asleep, PYTL agorazes, really, of the carriage were 100 miles, here. He is not at liberty to mention the down either of, my and said, with a lofty look of comment, but hopes you like traveling, here with a minuteness that was passion for my insignificance. Leo likewise had dropped in, with this scientific intelligence. I am glad to be, sir, said I, growing warm. See you, amico. Come sta. Water will. I have nothing to do with you, freeze when it is cold enough. Adio. Sir, returned the gentleman, pray, in the course of the night, also, Thay. Let me listen 0. Following phenomena had occurred. In you, sir, B. He enunciated this vowel after a Bishop Butler had insisted on spelling. Pause, and noted it down. His name, Bubbler, for which offense. At first I was alarmed, for an X against orthography and good manners. Press lunatic in no communication he had been dismissed as out of temper. With the guard, is a serious position. John Milton, suspected of willful NYS. The thought came to my relief that the tification had repudiated the author. Gentleman might be what is popularly Ship of Paradise Lost, and had intro. Called a rapper, one of a sect for duct, as joint authors of that poem. 3 of whom I have the highest read to unknown gentlemen, respectively. But whom I don't believe in. I named Grungers and Skagington. Was going to ask him the question, and Pliny Arthur, nephew, of King, when he took the bread out of my John of England, had self is tolerably comfortable in the save. You will excuse me, said the gen uncircle, where he was learning to. Tullman, contemptuously, if I am too paint on velvet, under the direction of MNCH in advance of common humanity Mrs. Trimmer and Mary Queen of, to trouble myself at all about it. I have Seots. Mouth. Past the night is indeed I pass thee if this should meet the eye of Thay. Whole of my time now, in spiritual in gentleman who favored me with these disclosures, I trust he will excuse my, said I, something snappishly, confessing that the sight of the rising, the conferences of the night be sun, and the contemplation of the mag. Can, continued the gentleman, turning nascent order of the vast universe. several leaves of his notebook, which made me impatient of them. In a word, this message, evil communications, I was so impatient of them, that I was corrupt good manners, mightily glad to get out at the next sound, said I, but, absolutely station, and to exchange these clouds, new pea, and vapors for the free air of heaven. By that time it was a beautiful morning. As I walked away among such new from spirits, returned the gentleman. I could only repeat my rather snap leaves as had already fallen from the pish and ask if I might be far golden, brown, and russet trees, and as what were the last communication. I looked around me on the wonders of a bird in the hand, said the gen creation, and thought of the steady Tallman, reading his last entry with changing and harmonious laws by great solemnity, worth, too, in the which they are sustained, the gentle man's spiritual interior seemed to me as poor a piece of journey work as ever this world saw, in which heathen state of mind I came within view of the house, and stopped to examine it at tree. I am of the same opinion. Bad I, but shouldn't it be bush? I came to me Bosh, returned the gentleman. The gentleman then informed me tentatively that the spirit of Socrates had delivered it was a solitary house, standing in a earth. The special revelation in the coarse sadly neglected garden, a pretty even of the night. My friend, I hope you are square of some 2 acres. It was a pretty well. There are 2 in this, bows of about the time of George the railway carriage. How do you do? Second, as stiff, as cold, as formal, and there are 17,000 folk run in as bad taste, as could possibly be the sired by the most loyal admirer of it, but I saw him in the daylight, sit. Whole quartet of George. It was Stingwick, his back toward me, on a seat. Uninhabited, but had, within a year or TNAT, stood beside my bed. His head, too, been cheaply repaired to render it was resting on his hand, and whether habitable, I say cheaply, because he was slumbering or grieving, I could. Work had been done in a surface man not discern. Amazed to see him there, any hour, and was already decaying as to the I sat up, moved my position, leaned on paint and plaster, found the colors of bed, and what at him. As he did, were fresh. A lopsided board dropped, not move. I spoke to him more than over the garden wall, announcing that once, as he did not move then, it was, to let on very reasonable terms, came alarmed, and laid my hand upon. Well furnished. It was much to his shoulder, as I thought, and there, closely and heavily shadowed by trees, was no such thing. And, in particular, there were 6 tall for all these reasons, and for others. Poplars before the front windows, which less easily and briefly stateable, I find, were excessively melancholy, and the sight the early morning to be my most ghost, of which had been extremely ill-chosen, lie time. Any house would be more or it was easy to see that it wasn't less haunted, to me, in the early morn. Avoided house a house that was shunning, and a haunted house could scarce net by the village, too, which my F.A. was lie address me to greater advantage, guided by a church spire some then, mile off house that nobody would. I walked on into the village, with the take, and the natural inference was, desertion of this house upon my mind. That it had the reputation of being, and I found the landlord of the